Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:06 now. Thanks so much for letting us be a part of your post-Christmas day and second day of Hanukkah celebrations. It's O'Connor and Company. We're live. We're right here with you, and we wouldn't want to be anywhere else. It's Larry O'Connor with Patrice Onwuka. Good morning, Patrice.
Good morning, Larry. Good morning, everybody.
And Merry Christmas. You're doing well?
Yes.
You're happy?
I am.
The kids are all happy? They got all their presents?
They're still sleeping. Shh.
All right. Victoria Coates is the Vice President of Heritage Foundation Institute for National Security and Foreign Policy. Got a brand new book out here. It's called The Battle for the Jewish State, How Israel and America Can Win. And that's what we want to do. We want to win. We need to win, frankly. I think, Victoria, it's fair to say that neither Israel nor America can afford to lose this battle for the Jewish state. Thanks for joining us.
Well, Larry, good to be with you, and Merry Christmas to both of you. But that's really the point of the battle for the Jewish state, is this is a war. It's a war for both Israel and America. It's not just a Jewish problem, although obviously it is a problem for Israel. But we have to recognize what's happening here in the United States and not negotiate with the enemy anymore. We have to.
And it certainly looks like we were negotiating with the enemy and, frankly, empowering the enemy, or at least enriching the enemy, considering so many terrorist attacks over the last several years were funded by Iran, and the Biden administration inexplicably allowed that money to get handed over to that terrorist state. So how quickly can this turn around? Is it really just a question of a shift of leadership in the White House and at the State Department, and everything can be quickly turned and resolved? Or is it really just, again, sort of a long-haul situation here?
No, I think it could be turned pretty quickly. And one of the questions I tried to answer in the book was just the question you posed. Why did they do this? Why did they allow Iran to sell 1.75 million barrels a day of oil to China, of all places? Why is this permitted? And it was permitted because both the Obama and the Biden administration took the worldview that partnership with Israel had not brought peace to the region for the United States, and we needed to look for alternatives, and their alternative was Iran. And so that's what they did. And if you look at it through that lens, you don't agree with it, but it makes sense. You can see what there is a logic to what they did, and the results have just been catastrophic.
Well, catastrophic is right. But, do you, Victoria, think that this is a bigger issue than just what happened on October 7th? I feel like the BDS movement, the treating Israel the same way South Africa was treated as some sort of apartheid country, just the misunderstanding of why America and Israel have such close ties has been lost on a whole generation or two. Is this really a bigger issue in America, where our next generation of leaders don't understand or appreciate that relationship?
No, absolutely. And that's again, part of the point of the book. It's really chapter 2, which is called Why Israel, which is explaining, the history of modern Israel, not just a response to the Holocaust, although that obviously was a catalyst, and I do go into that, but then, how successive American presidents over the last 76 years now dealt with the Jewish state. How have they, managed this relationship? What is possible now for the United States and Israel that wasn't possible 50 years ago? And to your point there, I was very honored. Senator Cruz, my old boss, wrote the foreword to the book. And what he wrote about was the anti-Semitism problem here in the United States. It's called The Rot Exposed. And it starts with the testimony of 3 college presidents last year, when they couldn't call killing Jews genocide. Yeah. And, that is a U.S. problem. That is here on our streets, on our campuses, being taught to our children.
And there's so many people who lament where we are right now in terms of the American dialogue over our support for our ally Israel, lament the fact that this used to be a bipartisan thing. It was Democrat Harry Truman who acknowledged the Jewish state right to exist and Israel's right to exist. This has not been something that, it became a partisan fight until quite recently. But, boy, those lines are drawn. And, of course, Senator Cruz, as you mentioned, writing your forward, he's been one of the greatest supporters and allies of staying firm with our support for Israel. When did this happen, Victoria Coates? When was this decided? I'd like to think that it looks as though it was Barack Obama who decided to shift this policy. But were the cracks starting to show a little earlier than that?
Well, it almost goes back to the beginning of support for Israel. Truman, you're absolutely correct, did recognize modern Israel 11 minutes after it was founded, and I sometimes apologize to our Israeli friends for the delay there.
Yes,
but
well said.
but that was under firm opposition from his State Department. So the State Department's pro-Arabism is very, very deep. So that's not new. And a little piece of good news is I'm from Pennsylvania, coming to you from Philadelphia this morning, and I didn't think I was going to be placed on this earth to say nice things about John Fetterman, but he, has been a voice of reason here and unafraid in his support. So I think we can get back there. But right now, you're 100% correct. It has become very partisan.
A quick follow-up here, because it's interesting that you said from the beginning the State Department's pro-Arabism, but listen, at the time, I guess you can maybe forgive them because they didn't know exactly what this was going to look like. We have 60, 70 years of history now. If you truly are pro-Arab, objectively speaking, the freest, safest, and most economically prosperous Arabs, other than those who happen to be part of a kingdom that owns oil in that region. But if you really want something good for the Arab people, you want them to live in the free nation of Israel, because they are the freest and most prosperous Arabs there are.
Yes, however ironically this is the case, and one of the really miraculous things about serving in the first Trump administration, and this is the final chapter of the book, and what's next, was the shift in the Arab world from professing their desire to destroy the state of Israel to realizing that Israel wasn't going away, and then coming to the conclusion they didn't want it to go away.
The Abraham
Accords. They wanted to be its friends, and that was what led us to the Abraham Accords, and that's why I'm so hopeful going into January 20th that President Trump, bringing the clarity he brought to the region and the world for that matter, but specifically in terms of the Middle East, can get back to making peace rather than war.
Victoria, as you think about not just Israel, but some of the other actors on the international stage, China, Russia, and they have different conflicts going on, but they certainly are dibbling and dabbling in the Middle East. What do you see? How do you see the new Trump administration, the relations with these other countries having an impact in the Middle East?
Oh, I think that's why, as the United States, the Middle East continues to demand our attention. We have China, as you said, dependent on the region for at least half of its energy supplies. The rest come from Russia. We have, the Russians supplying arms to everyone from the Houthi to Hezbollah. We have the Iranians supplying the Russians with drones for the war in Ukraine. This is all interconnected. And so as much as we might like to say, China is our biggest threat, that is 100% true. And we have to see everything through the lens of that threat, also true. But that doesn't mean we can somehow, as I said, pivot away from the Middle East because it's all there. So that is a new challenge for the incoming administration. It was not the case to the extent that it is now 8 years ago.
Quickly, Victoria Coates, less than a minute, but do you see any sort of movement with regard to the hostages that are still being... The fact that there's even a question of negotiation is outrageous and despicable, but President-elect Trump has said this better be remedied before I get inaugurated as president, or else there will be hell to pay, I believe were his words. What's happening there?
Yes, and we're all hopeful that they will come home. I was in Israel when he made that comment. It was a breath of fresh air. The only shameful thing is it took American leadership, 15 months to have that clarity. We needed a new president for somebody to say, hey, let them go. You're the enemy. This is not a negotiation. These are terms. And I'm very hopeful he will be successful.
Victoria Coates. The book is The Battle for the Jewish State, forward by Senator Ted Cruz, and it's a good read. It's a quick read, and you should get it so you're educated and you know what's going to happen here for the next 4 years, because it is a critical time in world history. Victoria Coates, always great to talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria.
Thanks, guys.
It is
Happy New Year.
You too.
You too.
8:15. Well, one other aspect of this end-of-year process that one always goes through is that very elite panels are assembled to reflect on what just happened in our year. And, of course, this year in particular, 2024, had the most extraordinary presidential election cycle with the most extraordinary events. from Joe Biden being forced to step down off the ticket because he was mentally and cognitively and physically incapable of being president, even though, by the way, he's still our president, to the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, to all of the lawfare and attempted convictions of Donald Trump, the attempt to remove him from the ticket, then the Kamala Harris coup where she was just ushered right in to be on the ticket, all the way up to the extraordinary, resounding victory of Donald Trump in the election. What a year. They're going to be talking about this year for decades and decades to come. But right now, in this final week of the year, we have assembled the greatest minds of our generation to discuss this election. And no greater mind in American politics, Patrice Onwuka, than the one and only Bill Kristal.
Oh boy!
Yes,
you know, he used to be a very thoughtful conservative.
Either he was or he was fooling us all. I don't know.
He used to be a thought leader in the movement. I'll put it that way.
It's fair to say.
And then President Trump did something to his mind that just I don't know.
Here's Bill Kristal trying to continue to keep the flame lit for the elites. By the way, so we call these people elites, and we don't mean it in any praiseworthy way. We actually mean it in sort of
a pejorative way, yes.
Bill apparently embraces this. He's like, you betcha I'm one of the elites. And by the way, maybe we were right all along. Listen to this, cut 17.
But I agree that the American public didn't agree with me, most of the American public, and that's a fact. That doesn't mean that one side is right and one side is wrong any more than Harvard's not always right and Harvard's not always wrong. Elites aren't always wrong. I'll shock you to see that for me to have this slightly Aristotelian point of view that the public can be wrong or the elites can be wrong, and one has to judge on the merits. And one doesn't get to just say, oh, those elites, they're out of touch, and that's the end of the argument. Maybe those elites care a little bit more about, demonizing Haitian immigrants in Ohio on the stage of that presidential debate, lying about them, and basically making, let's not kid ourselves, a racist argument to try to appeal to people to be terrified of these Haitians who are doing nothing but working in Middlefield, Ohio.
Oh, let's not kid ourselves. It's racist. Of course, he gets the town wrong. It's not Middlefield, it's Springfield. But,
yes, that's right.
Why should an elite who's so much far superior than us have to worry about the details of the facts? It's a fascinating take, to be sure. Let's just say, because this is fascinating. He said, I guess it's objectively speaking, it was racist what Donald Trump said in the debate about Springfield, Ohio, which is interesting because he never raised anybody's race. He never mentioned the color of anybody's skin. He didn't do anything like that. Unlike this guy, who, by the way, literally has made racist comments and judged people based on the color of their skin. This guy, by the way, is the aforementioned and heard from elitist Bill Kristal. Here's what he had to say right after the 2016 presidential election when Donald Trump won. Cut 18. Listen.
For whatever it's worth, I've sort of become, look, to be totally honest, if things are so bad, as you say, with the white working class, don't you want to get new Americans in who aren't going to be... I'm serious. You can make a case that this is going on too long and this is too crazy, probably, and I hope this thing isn't being, videotaped or ever shown anywhere. Whatever tiny, pathetic future I have is going to be totally collapsed. You can make a case that America has been great because every I think John Adams said this at the beginning, right? Basically, if you're in a free society, a capitalist thriving society, after 2, 3, 4 generations of hard work, everyone becomes kind of decadent, lazy, spoiled, whatever. And then luckily, you have these waves of people coming in from Italy and Ireland and Russia and now Mexico who really want to work hard and really want to succeed and really want their kids to live better lives than them and aren't sort of flipping coupons hoping that they can hang on.
Now remember, he started framing that about the white working class, right, is what he said. And then he went on to say, after a couple of generations, they get decadent and lazy, and you got to replenish the working class. So he is actually framing his argument based on race and the color of people's skin, which something Donald Trump had never done in any of the arguments that he made politically. So I just think it's important that our elites are heard from across the board, Patrice.
You know what's interesting? When you hear Elon Musk's name, you don't think elite. Yes, he is a rich man, the richest man in the world, but he's not elite in terms of, well, I'm smart, I'm better than you because I'm richer than you.
Right.
Same thing with President-elect Trump. Rich, but manages to communicate and connect with regular people, because I think at the end of the day, there's a different mindset between the elites that we're talking about, of which Bill Kristal falls into that category, versus wealthy people who recognize, yes, I'm wealthy, I'm blessed, but I'm also here to help other people. And it's the mindset that Americans rejected roundly. It is I'm smarter than you, I know better than you, you need to listen to me to determine how to live your life.
Yeah.
No, you have wealthy people like Trump and like Musk say, no, we do what you do and get the government out of the way so you can live your life. Those are two different mindsets, and it is absolutely right to continue to expose the elites for how awful they really are. So yeah, Bill Kristal, jump in that basket of elitism.
for Bill Kristal to sum up his performance as a political analyst and thought leader this year by saying, hey, we know we lost the election, but maybe we elites were right anyway, is really something to behold. And really only an elitist would do such a thing. So keep being you, Bill Kristal. It's working out great. Yeah, I have to say, he still gets invited to the gigs and he still gets the big paycheck. So who am I to gripe or argue? I mean, he's doing something right, even when he's always wrong. And it's now 8:36. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here on this day after Christmas. This is a fascinating story here that hit yesterday. This is a Harvard professor, and Patrice, I'm not one to immediately think that something a Harvard professor tells me is the absolute truth. Mm-hmm. However, what this Harvard professor is telling me, one Arthur Brooks, actually sort of fits into my observations in the real world, and quite possibly yours as well. In short, the unhappiest people, as well as the most mentally ill people in America, are people on the political left. And the happiest people are people on the political right. And this is not just because of the results of the election. In fact, you see this manifest all the time, that liberals, even when they win, they are still very unhappy, angry people. And I think it motivates their politics. It motivates their interest in sort of upending political norms and sort of, in some way, in my opinion, liberals like when the government, translated into they themselves, have control over so much of our society, our government, and our culture, because their lack of sense of control, their belief that things are outside of their control, lend to their unhappiness and sometimes instability. And so that's why they want to fix problems by being in control, taking control, and dictating how things are to go. I think that motivates much for people on the left. And so this sort of makes sense to me. What do you think of this?
Yeah, so two things. First, Arthur Brooks. He actually used to be the head of the former president of the American Enterprise Institute. So a smart guy, and he's crushing the data on just these unhappiest people. I would take it from a different angle. If you think back to the Rules for Radicals, which is Saul Alinsky's guidebook to organizing in America. This is what Barack Obama used to organize. He starts out saying you need to keep people you need to give people a sense of urgency. And what gives urgency? They need to feel like they're going to lose something. They need to be in a position of alarm. You need to really raise the stakes and get people's blood boiling. It's why a lot of political ads, for example, tend to be negative rather than positive, because negativity drives people. So if the left is often, and the radical left, which is frankly overtaken, hijacked the entire liberal movement, they are often looking for these high panic, high deadly situations, whether it's climate change for one generation, the racial reckoning starting in 2020. They're always upping the ante and keeping people in a state of alarm over what's going on, because then you can manipulate people, and to your point about controlling them, you can get them to do what you want them to do. And so I think that's why so many people on the left, they can't enjoy a state of just satisfaction, of peace. They always have to be in the state of alarm. The world is going to come to an end if we don't pass climate change, an agenda in 12 years. And that has an impact on their psyche.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fine observation, too. And again, we don't mean this in any sort of pejorative way, and obviously there are exceptions to the rule. There are many people on the left who are happy in general.
Sure.
I don't see them very often, but I'm sure they're there. And we're not trying to paint with a broad stroke and all of that jazz. But here's a larger question here. And I think, by the way, that there are plenty of studies that bear this out, that people who are conservative tend to be happier people. All right. Now, the question, in fact, let's hear Arthur Brooks talk about this real fast, and then I'm going to give you the next thesis here. It's cut 19, Michael, if you could.
10 years ago, you wrote, conservative women seem to be particularly blissful. About 40% say they're very happy. That makes them slightly happier than conservative men and significantly happier than liberal women.
Yeah.
The unhappiest of all are liberal men. Only about a fifth consider themselves very happy.
That was true 10 years ago. Liberal women have overtaken liberal men as the unhappiest group. You find that particularly young women, very interesting new data show that white liberal women under 30 have almost a 6 in 10 chance of having been diagnosed with a mental illness in America today. It's a really big problem. And there's lots of speculation on what that has to do with politics, what it has to do with race, what it has to do with age, et cetera, et cetera. But what you find is that this is a group that's really, really struggling. And it's a pity because it's not good for them, it's not good for society, and that's what we see. So I don't think that being a political conservative is a panacea for being a happy person, but we see disproportionately these happiness and unhappiness effects in different parts of the population for sure.
6 out of 10 liberal women, white women in particular.
Scary.
It is scary. And I think, by the way, so much of it, they also happen to be the most medicated
Julie talks a lot about this.
Country.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's my question, though. Because I think it's too simple to say if you're liberal, you're unhappy, and if you're conservative, you're happy. Let me turn it around for a moment. Instead of saying conservative people tend to be the happiest, is it possible it's the other way around, and happier people tend to be conservative? Let me be clear. Having a conservative outlook and living a conservative lifestyle doesn't necessarily make you happy, but if you are a happy person, and I believe that part of happiness is being grateful for what you have rather than always seeing what's missing and what needs to be fixed. You're actually very happy, satisfied, and grateful for those things that you do have, and you make the most of the things that you have, and that puts you in a happy frame of mind. Does your happiness then lend you toward a more conservative outlook on the world? You see what I mean?
Maybe.
Where if you are an unhappy person, that steers you more toward a liberal perspective. In other words, it's not conservatism that makes you happy, it's being happy that makes you conservative.
I honestly see this as like glass half full versus glass half empty. The idea that, the pie is just fixed from an economic standpoint. America is just one fixed pie, and we have to recut the slices to take from people who have bigger slices and to give to people who have smaller slices. Mm-hmm. That's what the left views it as. Whereas we say, no, why does the pie have to be that small? Let's grow the pie so everybody's piece gets bigger, and however it's sliced out. I will say there's one other element here, and I think this also could be an explanation: faith. When you look at how charitable Americans are, the reason why they give so much, a lot of it has to do with people who go to church and people who practice their faith. And a lot of conservatives tend to go to church and tend to give a lot more money. Not perfect, but it's another angle here.
And I think religious faith also lends itself to that gratitude question. And
yes,
the more grateful you are, I think the happier you are. The bottom line is, moms, dads, if you want to raise your children to be happy, I hear that a lot. What do you want from what do you want your child to? I just want them to be happy. I just want them to be happy. Well, here's the secret sauce. You want your kids to be happy, especially your daughters? Raise them conservative. It's 8:44.
Miss anything? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Get today's breaking news on the Vince Colonnade Show, weekdays 3 to 6, right here on WMAL.
All right, so we were talking about movies the other day, about go-to Christmas movies. Mercedes and I were going through the list, and we all agree, everyone agrees, It's a Wonderful Life is the movie. If you're going to have a Christmas movie that you have to watch, It's a Wonderful Life, right?
That's not true. It's Elf. I'm teasing. I don't think It's a Wonderful Life, but it doesn't have to be Elf.
Elf is not. You're just so wrong about Elf, but that's fine. That's fine. I just it's objectively true. It is objectively true. Here's the point, though, that I'm trying to say. If anyone heard that and said, "Oh, I've never seen It's a Wonderful Life. Let me go. We'll stream it on Amazon Prime." So apparently, for some stupid, inexplicable reason, Amazon is offering an abridged version of It's a Wonderful Life. Now, why you need an abridged version of It's a Wonderful Life? It's only 2 hours long, okay? And I think the abridged version is like an hour and 45 minutes long. So what are you saving yourself?
So what are you cutting 15 minutes off for? Yeah.
And by the way, what they have cut is like one of the most critical moments of the movie. Listen to this. If you click on the abridged version of It's a Wonderful Life, you miss this. I mean, it is literally the most important climactic moment of the movie when George Bailey realizes everything that would have gone wrong had he not been born. And they cut it out of the movie, Patrice. Who does
about
this?
A dud. Well, listen, we just had that interview earlier talking about the new Mary movie where they cut out the angel telling Mary that she's going to have a baby and telling Joseph, "Yeah, you're going to raise the heavenly Father's son as your own, and don't put Mary away."
This is almost as sacrilegious as that.
This is a trend. It's an angel. They don't want angels, and they don't want any too significant a religious tone in what should be, I don't know, classic movies.
Thank you. No. I don't understand how Billy Wilder's estate doesn't sue them to high heaven for presenting It's a Wonderful Life like that. This is an outrage. I really am so exercised about this. It's literally the reason for the movie. It's the entire thesis of the movie, and they cut it out. Please, for God's sake, if you're going to watch It's a Wonderful Life, watch the entire on it. You can do it when you go to Amazon. Look for the one that's 2 hours and 10 minutes long. I promise you it's worth your time if you've never seen this movie before. What in the hell are they thinking at Amazon? Who has done this? And by the way, when they find out who decided to edit this part out of It's a Wonderful Life, I'm straight to jail. No. No parole. No probation. Frankly, no trial is necessary at this point. If Trump really wants to make America great again, they will find out who did this, and he will put them in jail. At least for the next several years.
It is a crime. It is a crime what they did to this movie.
It's a Wonderful Life. How do you do that to It's a Wonderful? It's like I'm trying to think of an analogy. I mean, now Elf is different. I mean, you could actually cut all of Elf pretty much except for Bob Newhart's scenes. And James Caan's scenes, and that would be fine. But Elf is a terrible movie, and I'm not going to change my mind about that.
It's hilarious. Okay, maybe it's like cutting out a scene from Home Alone. Maybe you cut out, I don't know, the scene where in the airplane when they realize that Kevin is missing. When the mom has that moment.
It's like trying to make Gone with the Wind a little shorter, so they cut all that stuff out about the Civil War. Okay, that's what this is like.
Oh, there you go. Okay, that's a good analogy.
Straight to jail. It's 8:53. That is a wrap, Patrice Onwuka. But guess what?
What?
We're going to be right back tomorrow doing it all over again.
That's right. And it's going to be a Friday, the last Friday of 2024.
And you're not going to want to miss it. So we'll see you 5 a.m. Coming up next, it's the Chris Plant Show. Have a great one.